I watched the taillights of my own truck fade down the dirt road, dust swirling in the cold Montana air. My wife Michelle was behind the wheel. My son Wyatt sat in the passenger seat, staring dead ahead, not once looking back. 10 minutes earlier, she'd tossed my empty wallet at my feet like garbage, smirking as she said, "You're just baggage now." That was after her lover, Preston Ward, sucker punched me in the ribs so hard I could barely breathe. My name is Richard Kane. I'm 56. I built Iron Path Logistics from the ground up, through war zones, storms, betrayals, and somehow this moment hit harder than anything I'd survived. Because this wasn't business. This was family, and they'd just stolen everything. The company I founded, the lake house I built with my own hands, even the private equity funds meant for Wyatt's college, gone in a single, calculated move. Michelle had been planning it for months, maybe years, smiling in my face while transferring assets behind my back, feeding lies to our son, and signing papers she thought I'd never see. But what neither of them realized was this. I didn't survive 20 years in the military and 2 decades in defense logistics by being stupid. I saw the signs. And I had a backup plan. As they drove off with my life, I pulled a prepaid phone from the heel of my boot. 1 number, 1 sentence. Code, Gray Wolf. The voice on the other end replied, "Understood." They thought I was finished. They thought they'd buried me. What they'd really done was wake me up. Iron Path Logistics wasn't born in a boardroom. It was born in the back of a Humvee under enemy fire when I realized how many lives were lost because supplies didn't arrive on time. After retiring from the military, I took that anger and turned it into a mission. I started Iron Path in a rented garage with 2 other vets and a busted laptop. Within 5 years, we were coordinating supply chains for oil fields, embassy zones, and military contractors across the globe. I gave everything to that company. Sweat, blood, even the time I should have spent being a father. Michelle was there in the beginning. She said she understood, said she was proud. We bought the lake house during our 10th year, my quiet promise to her that one day I'd slow down, but I never did. Business was booming, clients doubled, I was traveling every week, and somewhere in that fog of ambition and duty, I stopped seeing the rot setting in at home. Michelle started taking wellness retreats to clear her head. Wyatt became distant, resentful even. I figured it was just teenage stuff. I was wrong. 3 months ago, everything collapsed. Overnight, Iron Path systems were gutted, client records deleted, funds drained. It looked like a targeted cyber attack, but it wasn't random. My CTO found traces of internal authorization. Someone had used admin-level access, someone who knew my codes. We patched what we could, but the damage was irreversible. Major contracts pulled out, the board panicked. Within weeks, the company I spent 20 years building was being dissected, sold off for scraps. And Michelle? She was nowhere to be found. Her name was on none of the emergency calls, none of the support filings. Just silence. And then last week I found out why. Preston Ward, the same guy who tried to poach Iron Path 5 years ago, was back in town. Rumors swirled. Then came the leaked photo of him and Michelle at a luxury condo closing. That was the moment the truth sank in like concrete. My empire hadn't fallen from the outside. It had been gutted from within by the 2 people I trusted most. I stood alone at that old gas station off Route 19, my breath visible in the icy air, ribs still throbbing from Preston's sucker punch. The payphone beside the closed diner didn't work, but I wasn't planning on using that anyway. I reached down into the sole of my boot and peeled back a flap of rubber, pulling out a prepaid burner I'd kept hidden for nearly a decade. It still had battery. 1 number, 1 shot, I dialed. 2 rings. Then, go. A female voice, cold and efficient. "Code Gray Wolf," I said, keeping my tone flat. Silence. Then, Confirmation required. Alpha 972, I replied. She didn't ask anything else. She didn't need to. Activation complete. You'll have movement in 2 hours. Stay dark. The line went dead. Evelyn Strauss, my old recon analyst, wasn't just any contact. After I sold part of Iron Path's shares to the public, I funneled a slice into a private contingency fund. A shadow protocol? A team built in case the world I'd built ever got turned upside down? I never thought I'd need it. Until now. Evelyn was ex-NSA, ran signals intelligence for Iron Path before we grew too big for her to stay off the radar. When she left, I kept her close. Paid her to build out a separate network. Quiet surveillance, asset tracing, legal forensics, all off book. Now, she was calling in Hammer Team, 6 operatives, all ghosts, former spec ops, cyber analysts, and a legal shark named Cooper, who specialized in asset seizure and fraud recovery. Within 90 minutes, Evelyn sent a secure message through the dead drop server. Michelle's GPS pinged, your black Range Rover. Parked at Cane Lake Lodge, cameras online, internal power activated. They're moving in. I opened my laptop in the cab of my truck, hotspotted off a nearby Wi-Fi network. The feed came through in grainy black and white. Michelle opening my bourbon, Preston wandering shirtless through the study, Wyatt asleep in my leather recliner. It was like watching strangers live in a house I wasn't dead enough to leave. I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I clicked open the archive folder I'd quietly built months earlier, labeled Endgame. Michelle thought I'd missed the signs, that I'd grown soft. She had no idea I'd been watching the entire time. I closed the laptop. Let them get comfortable, I muttered. We're just getting started. The Cane Lake Lodge was never just a getaway. It was a stronghold. When I had it built in 2013, I didn't just pay for high-end stonework and lake views. I paid for layered surveillance, motion sensors in the walls, audio mics hidden behind the baseboards, a full interior camera grid wired to a private cloud. Michelle never knew. She always mocked my military paranoia. Said I couldn't relax even on vacation. I smiled and let her think that. Now that paranoia was saving my life. On my laptop screen, I watched Michelle sip 20-year-old bourbon I'd been saving for Wyatt's graduation. She laughed, really laughed, as Preston showed her some kind of document pointing at figures on a tablet. Once we move the rest to Cayman, he's finished, Preston said. The mic picked it up crystal clear. Michelle leaned in and whispered, he still thinks Wyatt loves him. They clinked glasses. My knuckles whitened on the keyboard. Not because I was surprised, but because it confirmed everything I'd suspected. They hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. They had orchestrated a corporate hit job, weaponized my son, and now they were celebrating with my whiskey in my house. Evelyn's team fed me more intel by the hour. Preston had created 3 shell companies linked to Iron Path's IP, planning to rebrand and relaunch under his name. Michelle had filed false power of attorney documents weeks ago using forged signatures. They weren't just thieves, they were tacticians, but they'd underestimated me. I had copies of the originals, timestamps, and metadata to prove forgery. Every click, every fake email, every late-night rendezvous. They were all right there in the surveillance data. Even Wyatt's face, as he scrolled through Michelle's phone in secret while she showered, hesitating when he saw the photo of Preston in my chair, wearing my cufflinks. He looked up at the camera, just for a second, but it was enough. He knew. He just didn't know what to do with it, yet. I hit record on everything, uploaded clips to 3 separate drives, all off-site. Michelle had taken my house, my business, and my kid. Now I was taking the one thing they thought they had in the bag, control. It was nearly midnight when the message came in, just a simple text from a number I didn't recognize. Is it true what they did to you? For a second, I just stared at it, unsure if it was bait. But then the next line appeared, if you're really out there, prove it. That's when I knew. It was Wyatt, My son, the boy who used to fall asleep on my chest during Sunday football, now 17 and silent, swept up in Michelle and Preston's lies. I didn't reply right away. I went into the surveillance archive and pulled an old photo. Me, holding Wyatt as a toddler, both of us in Iron Path jackets. I cropped out the background and sent him something better. A new photo of me taken just minutes ago, sitting in my truck with that day's newspaper and our old family chessboard beside me. The pieces were set in the exact pattern he'd been learning from my strategy books, a puzzle only we knew. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Finally, "Okay, it's you." I could feel the hesitation in his typing. "Why didn't you say anything sooner?" I stared at the screen for a long time before typing. "Would you have believed me?" Another pause. Then, "I don't know." He asked for the truth. I told him everything, not with anger. Just facts. The forged documents, the siphoned money, the surveillance. "They told me you lost the company, that you couldn't handle it," I replied. "I lost the company because I trusted the wrong people. I'm still here because I prepared for the right ones." He didn't say much after that, but before the chat ended, he sent one more message. "Meet me tomorrow, 3 p.m., Crawford Trailhead. Come alone." I closed the laptop slowly. Wyatt had questions, he had doubt, but he also had courage, and somewhere beneath all the noise, he still had a father. They never saw it coming. While Michelle and Preston lounged at the lodge, toasting with stolen bourbon and planning their clean exit, Evelyn and Hammer team were executing the counter-strike. It started quietly. That morning, Bridge and Iron Holdings, one of Iron Path's former silent partners, announced an emergency acquisition of Iron Path's frozen assets. The press release was cold and clinical, but every major outlet picked it up. Bridge and Iron secures logistics IP amid ongoing federal fraud investigation. It was vague enough to avoid lawsuits, but pointed enough to send shockwaves through the industry. Michelle's phone lit up with news alerts. Preston cursed when he saw it on his tablet. "They weren't supposed to move that fast," he muttered. Meanwhile, Evelyn was busy flooding the IRS tip line and SEC watchdog contacts with neatly packaged evidence. False power of attorney forms, stolen funds, shell corporations registered under Preston's alias, and bank transfers traced back to Michelle's Cayman accounts. But the real gut punch came next. One by one, Michelle's bank accounts began locking her out. The funds she thought were safely hidden offshore? Reversed, flagged, and under investigation. Her attorney, on retainer for years, abruptly dropped her with a boilerplate email citing unmanageable conflicts of interest. She tried to call, no answer. That same day, Wyatt opened the secure USB drive I'd left in a hidden box near Crawford Trailhead. Inside were files, screenshots, emails, audio files. Every sordid detail. It wasn't just about money. It was about manipulation. It was about grooming him to hate me, to trust Preston, to believe I was weak and broken. His own mother had whispered lies in his ear while plotting to erase me. And now, with every document he read, every voicemail he heard, the cracks deepened. At the lodge, Michelle slammed her phone down. "It's him," she said, her voice shaking. "He's doing this." Preston tried to calm her, but the facade was cracking. He poured another drink. "He's bluffing." But deep down, he knew. This wasn't a bluff. This was precision payback. I wasn't after vengeance. I was after truth. And now the lies they'd built their new life on were crumbling, one exposure at a time. The sun was just beginning to set when I pulled up to Cane Lake Lodge, the sky bleeding orange behind the pine-studded ridgeline. The same lodge I had built with my bare hands in a dream. My truck engine cut off, but the air still thrummed with tension. I walked up the stone path, boots crunching gravel with every deliberate step. No knocking, no hesitation. I opened the front door and stepped inside like I never left. Michelle spun around in shock, wineglass in hand, Preston rising behind her, already scowling like he owned the place. "What the hell are you doing here?" she snapped, but there was a flicker of panic in her eyes. I didn't answer. I just pulled out my laptop and set it on the kitchen island. One click and the screen came to life. Bank transfer logs, surveillance clips, signatures compared side by side, hers, Preston's, the forgeries. "This," I said, pointing to the screen, "is everything." Preston scoffed. "You're bluffing. You can't prove anything." I tapped a key. The screen shifted to a live video call with Cooper, my legal lead, flanked by 2 federal agents in suits. "Actually, I can." Michelle stepped back, her hand trembling. "You don't understand." "No," I cut in, voice calm but razor sharp. "You don't understand. You thought I was blind, that I'd just lay down and die while you gutted everything I built. But I saw it coming, and I prepared for it." Preston lunged for the laptop, shouting, "You son of a..." But before he got halfway across the room, the front door flew open. Evelyn stepped in, flanked by 2 federal agents in tactical vests. "Preston Ward, Michelle Kane," one of them announced. "You are under federal investigation for conspiracy, financial fraud, and identity forgery. Do not resist." Michelle's knees buckled as they took her arm. Preston shouted curses as they cuffed him, yanking his arm behind his back. From the front porch, Wyatt watched everything unfold. His face was pale, lips tight, but he didn't look away. When Michelle cried out, "Wyatt, tell them this is a mistake. Help me," he didn't move, just shook his head slowly. "I saw everything, Mom. You lied." That's when the weight lifted. Not just the revenge, not just the justice, but the moment my son stopped believing their story and saw me again for who I really was. As the agents led them out the door, Wyatt walked in, met my eyes, and whispered, "I know, I swear." I nodded. "You do now. That's what matters." We stood there in silence, father and son, surrounded by broken trust and hard truths. But for the first time in a long time, there was nothing left to hide. The story broke wide the next morning. Headlines ran across national outlets. CEO's wife and business rival arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. Cable news anchors speculated about how a decorated veteran turned entrepreneur could be betrayed so deeply, so methodically, and survive it with ironclad receipts. The footage of Michelle and Preston being led out in cuffs, disheveled, furious, looped endlessly. Every network played the moment Michelle screamed my name, begging for someone to believe her. No one did. Wyatt's name was kept out of the press, per my request. He didn't need the shame of being associated with their fall. Instead, he stayed at my side, silent but steady. He moved back into the guest room at the lodge, started classes at the local community college, and asked if he could work part-time for the new operations arm I was building with Evelyn and Cooper. "I've got a lot to learn," he said, "and a lot to make up for." I told him the only thing that mattered was that he showed up. And he had. Meanwhile, Bridge and Iron formally restored my equity position in the newly restructured Iron Path Systems. I didn't want the title back. I didn't need the spotlight. I just wanted my name cleared and my legacy intact. The Department of Justice announced additional charges that week: cybercrime, corporate espionage, financial misconduct across state lines. Michelle and Preston weren't just going down. They were going down hard, and the world knew exactly who had exposed them. I didn't give interviews. I didn't go on podcasts. I didn't need applause. The truth was public. My reputation was restored. And the people who tried to erase me from my own story, they became footnotes in mine. That was enough. That was justice. The lodge was quiet that evening, the lake still as glass, reflecting the first stars of night. Wyatt and I sat on the back porch, 2 mugs of black coffee resting on the railing between us. No words for a while, just the crackle of the old fire pit and the sound of crickets echoing through the pines. Then he finally spoke. "I thought he was helping us," he said softly, eyes fixed on the dark water. I didn't know what was real anymore. I nodded, not out of agreement, but understanding. That's what people like him do. They don't just steal money, they steal trust. Wyatt turned to me, guilt still heavy in his voice. I should have seen it sooner. I looked at him, really looked, and saw not the confused boy from months ago, but a young man who'd walked through fire and came out wanting to be better. You're here now, I said, and that's what matters. I reached into my jacket and handed him a small, tarnished brass key. The one to the boathouse I built when he was 10. One day this place will be yours. Just promise me you'll protect what we built. He nodded. I will, Dad. I swear I will. Some betrayals hit you in the gut. Others try to erase everything you've ever built. But the truth? It always leaves a trail. I didn't fight back for revenge. I fought for my name, my son, and the legacy they tried to steal. For every man who's been blindsided, shut out, or sold short, your story isn't over. You don't need to burn bridges. Just outlast the fire. Dignity, grit, and truth still matter in this world, even when it feels like no one's watching. If this story hit home, hit that like button, share it, and subscribe, because we've got more to tell. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about preparation, resilience, and reclaiming what's rightfully yours. Richard Kane didn't fall apart when his world collapsed. He didn't scream, beg, or chase. He planned. He endured. And when the time came, he executed justice with precision and dignity. That's the lesson here. Real strength isn't loud. It's steady. It's knowing when to speak and when to strike. In a world where loyalty can be bought and legacy stolen overnight, men like Richard remind us that honor still has value. That truth, backed by discipline, will always outlast deception. So, if you've ever felt blindsided by betrayal, by a business deal gone wrong, or by someone you trusted turning on you, remember this: your comeback can be louder than their sabotage. You're not alone, and you're not powerless. If this story moved you, hit that like button. If you know someone who needs to hear this, maybe a brother, a father, a friend, share it with them. And if you want more stories of redemption, justice, and real men rising through the ashes, subscribe to this channel. Because these aren't just stories, they're reminders of what we're still made of.